One is an influential cult film portraying a nightmarish vision of a fractured psyche that may or may not represent reality. The other attempts something similar, but with more jump scares and sharper musical stings. Jacob's Ladder. They Remade It.
Hi, and welcome back to another episode of They Remade It. I'm your host, Stuart.
And I'm your host, Jacob.
And we're here with a slightly delayed, spooky entry. I apologize for my life being as tumultuous as anything. I should be good to go now, though.
It can't be helped, but I hope you all are enjoying our spooky duo Halloween episodes in the middle of November.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Not complain. That's what...
It's certainly October when we're recording now. It's even stormy outside my window right now.
Ooh, that is certainly spooky. It's overcast here, but nothing's happened yet.
It's just I have full grade spooky, and you have getting there spooky,
moderately spooky. Yeah. Oh, that ties into something I watched, but diet spook. It certainly comes across as that. I have the chill though. It's a lot. It's been making my walks a lot better because I do those daily walks.
Yep, I have.
And it got so hot there near the end.
Yeah,
I was having to end early.
I got my AC finally turned off, and I just had the windows open. Usually, not right now, obviously. Otherwise, you just hear.
Yeah, I did appreciate.
But yeah. Now that we've once again gotten the weather out of the way, at least this time it's spooky weather, I presume you have been watching some spooky things this month.
Some. I just want to say I love it that we open every show with a forecast, but also it's a forecast of 2 weeks ago.
It's a precast.
When the episode comes out. Yeah. Oh, that was the weather 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But yes.
Nightville shit.
I have been playing, and I've been watching watching horror stuff, playing horror stuff, because that's usually what I do these years.
Cool.
Unfortunately, on the playing front, there's not a lot to talk about. I played a lot of just random horror-based games that you... Oh, this is on sale on Steam or on the PSN store. A lot of them are point and clicks, and they're not much to talk about, really. But this past week I have been playing, and I actually just finished it last night, Inscription.
I've seen ads for that.
Yeah, the newest Daniel Mullins game, which I'm a big fan of his stuff. He's made Pony Island and The Hex up to this point. Which were both games that I enjoyed. And basically, without spoiling it, because all of his games are so heavily spoil-based, the entire conceit of the games that he makes are you are playing a game inside of a game. And that's pretty much it.
There's a metaphor for life in there somewhere.
Exactly, yeah. There's a lot of metaphors for a lot of things, I think.
Yeah. Man, this is going to get a real metaphorical episode. Just forewarning all y'all.
Yeah, if you don't want to listen to me say hypothetically and metaphorically every 2 minutes, then...
And probably biblically.
Biblically, yes. There's a lot of biblically.
which makes my own stomach roil every now and again, where I'm just biblical. I feel the soles of my feet start to burn.
Yeah, how horrible, how hell-esque.
But we get ahead of ourselves.
Yes, I am certainly getting ahead of myself. So to rattle through these real quick, because I actually wrote down everything that I watched, and I watched 5 things. I'm not going to go in depth over everything, but the first group, I finally watched Venom because I was going to see the sequel in theaters, so I watched both of those within the span of like a day. And I do like them. I liked Venom. I remember I was hesitant at first because I haven't been a big fan of Marvel stuff, and I know it's Sony Marvel, but I haven't been a big fan of their stuff either. So I was really hesitant to pick it up, but I enjoyed it. I liked I specifically, the character portrayals of the interactions that Tom Hardy has with the Venom character are the only thing I really cared about, but it was more than enough to make up for everything else because I actually like the sequel better because it has it has more characters that have fun interactions that I just like, and I think Woody Harrelson's portrayal of Carnage, just that character, is so much more fun to watch than generic billionaire scientist number 47 in the villain role, which I get it. It mirrors real life because that shit is happening. I'm tired of seeing it because it's always the same thing.
Yeah, we deal with those villains enough in our reality. Let's mix it up a little.
Yeah, and I get that it's hard to like separate that too much because it's based on a comic from the 90s as well, and if you stray too far from the villain origin story or the origin story of Venom or whatever, then people are going to complain. But not that I read any of those, it could be wildly different. I just assumed that they tried to adapt as much as they could because they usually at least try to do that.
I mean, all I know is that Tom Hardy has been an absolute chaotic mad lad figuring all this stuff out and just being like, we're doing it the way that the fans have clearly portrayed the way they like it. Like, folks basically turned the first Venom into a romantic comedy between Eddie and Venom, to the point where Sony even re-released a trailer for the movie in the style of a romantic comedy movie, and I adore it to death. It's so funny.
I haven't seen that, but I buy it because there are a lot of very overt tones of the romantic relationship between the two presented in the sequel.
Yeah,
and it's like it's not you're reading into it; they're blatantly doing it to try and 100%. Mark it to that strength. Yeah,
it's pretty like Tom Hardy and the director both came out and talked about that, being like, "Oh yeah, no, that was fully intentional."
Something in me, I did Andy Serkis direct that?
Actually, I think I did.
Golem himself? He directed it? Okay. I was like, I didn't grab the director, but this sounds right.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was, actually.
Yeah, so, no, that's fun. I actually liked both of those. I thought the sequel was better. And that rolls into 2 other things I watched. I watched both of the new Addams Family animated movies. And I only did that because, I just found them for free. And I was like, whatever, I haven't seen them. And I do like the designs of the core cast. They're just going based off the comics, obviously, but they look really well done.
Mm.
Neither of the movies are really that good. They're pretty standard stock affair for kids' movies anymore. But similar to the Venom stuff, I thought the sequel was more enjoyable because they actually were able to go places and do things with the character that the first one didn't do, because the first was the standard story of be yourself. That every kids movie loves to tell. It's always an environmental message, or it's to be yourself. That's what kids movies like to do. And the second one still has elements of that in there because it's kind of the core of the Addams Family, I guess. Do what you like to do, and force other people around you to do the things you like because you are just ignorant to other people and you have no empathy. Which is the core belief of the Addams Family.
A little bit.
That being said, though, I also think the character designs in the second one are better, too. Because aside from the core family in the first one, everyone that's just supposed to be a normal townsperson is grotesquely hideous. They are more disgusting than the Addamses. and I can't stand it. It's like no one tried because they didn't feel that they had to. It's a mess, and I think they improved on that.
It's like the Who's in the live action Grinch.
Yes, but worse. They're almost like Tim Burton sketchy, but without the dark charm of that. Like one of the main lead characters that isn't in Adams she's like a teenage girl, and she has this huge bobblehead. Oh my god! And everything else is a twig. It's like a stick figure with a huge head, and it's just gross. It's disgusting. I can't stand it.
I had nightmares of that girl.
Yeah, she stares at me from the corner of my room when I wake up at 2.
Yeah, she's still at my house right now. She eats all my cereal.
Gross. Well, I guess she can fold up and hide in hard-to-reach places.
Except for the head.
That's true. It's always poking out of the vents. Ugh, gross. Are you guys spooked yet? Anyways, the final thing I watched, I did watch Halloween Kills in theaters.
Oh, yeah.
The follow-up to the 2018 Halloween film that we enjoyed. It was good, but I think it took too long to build up to what it was trying to do, because there's this entire other... It feels like a B plot, but it turns into an A plot for a big majority of the movie, in that Tommy Doyle, the kid from the first movie, basically is like, we're not taking this shit anymore, which you can see that in the trailer. Everyone's like, Michael dies tonight, and they all get pitchforks and bats, and it's a huge mob thing. And it does result in a pretty cool scene in a hospital where it's just mob mentality rules. But that like takes over the film. There's probably 30 to 35 minutes in the middle of the film where Michael Myers is just nowhere, and you don't know where he is because all this other stuff is going on. And I'm like, I don't... If this was its own thing, that's fine, but you showed Michael. Michael's here. Get to Michael. Where's Michael?
To be fair, that is kind of funny to think about, like, no wonder Michael has been able to torment this town for so long, because they keep getting distracted by this other shit. He's able to hide because everyone's too oblivious.
They do end up building off of that, which is why I really do... I enjoy the opening of the movie, and I enjoy the ending a lot too. It's just the middle is kind of murky. And I didn't expect the ending because I didn't know that this was a trilogy. I'm kind of disconnected from movie news, so I didn't know that Halloween Ends was the third movie is set to come out next October. I didn't know that was planned. Plus I swear when the two of us saw the first one back in 2018, Jamie Lee Curtis was on Twitter just a week or so later saying that the next movie was going to be the last one.
I mean, that may have been
I don't know if they changed it. Yeah, I don't know if they updated it or what, but...
Then they realized there's more money to be made.
Exactly, yeah.
Because everyone's got to have a fucking trilogy.
Hopefully Halloween Ends is the last one, and it's Halloween End. Is it the end for Michael Myers, period? Obviously not, because it's a character that makes money. But as far as this new set of movies goes, with old Jamie Lee Curtis reprising her role, I do hope this is the end of that, and I think it might be.
I will damn Star Wars to my dying day simply for the fact of codifying the concept of a trilogy, because, like, my god, movies need to fucking get to the point and be done.
I don't care about these overarching saga. I had this conversation with a friend of ours years ago, and this is a huge tangent we don't have to get into too much, but it was like, it was basically like, I still enjoy Lord of the Rings to an extent, but I don't know if I've ever liked Star Wars, to be honest. I don't even know how much I ever liked the original trilogy. I think they're fine, but part of it is like a mob mentality thing where it's like, well, yeah, I guess I like Star Wars because everyone likes it. But the more and more I see of it, the more I'm realizing it's not Disney that's making me hate this thing. I don't know that I've ever really cared for it, and now that all this shit is constantly being pumped out, I'm finally... It's actually helping me realize that I don't give a shit about Star Wars.
This is basically the media equivalent of being forced to smoke a whole carton of cigarettes to stop smoking. Where you realize, oh yeah, it's actually terrible.
It's bad. Why did I ever enjoy this?
Yeah.
Why did I think I would?
I'll still firmly defend that a lot of their side content, like their tangential stuff, is their best work because they're actually allowed to have some fun with it. But even then, it still can't help but go back to the fucking like the core of like, oh, the Force is in all of us bullshit, and I'm just like, God, just shut up. it's so not good.
I don't care. And there's all this news that Disney plans on like remaking the prequels, and I'm like, just
what?
If you're gonna do Star Wars stuff in this universe, start pulling in. Because as much as I said I don't think I've ever really cared for Star Wars, I did in high school get into the extended universe a bit because they did have fun, and there were all these wacky whatever things. And it's like, do more of that. I don't need the Skywalker stuff constantly.
Yeah.
It's taken over the entire idea of what Star Wars sort of became in the late 80s and the early 90s, which was just this whole universe of things you could do, and then the prequels came out, and it kind of just went back to, no, everything successful that's Star Wars related has to tie into the Skywalkers. Just period. And I'm done with it.
Yeah. God, this is a tiny fucking galaxy, apparently.
Yeah, exactly.
Jesus Christ.
Everyone knows each other, and every character meets every other character instantly.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's it for me.
Cool.
So, what about you in your very hectic past couple of weeks?
Yes. I've done what I would argue one spooky thing, but I'll get to that one. First thing I've started actually watching Star Trek Next Generation. Just because, I'd been seeing clips of it online, and I'd always agree with a lot of the philosophies they kind of bring up in the show, and I'm always like, yeah, this is pretty interesting. It's cool that like a lot of these very moral debates were being talked about decades ago, and it doesn't really seem like a lot of them get remembered. Not a solid 70% of the stuff they talk about is kind of like, all right, whatever, and like no shit Sherlock kind of things. But every now and again, they'll drop some cool, like, moral level quandaries that's actually like, oh, this is actually kind of interesting. Otherwise it's pretty mindless. It's, pretty harmless. It's a decent enough. The cast thing is obviously fantastic. But, I'm only a little bit into season 1 so far, and I mostly just do it just to have something to kind of have on after I get home from work. Just so I'm not just like sitting around doing nothing. Mm-hmm. In the times I actually have that opportunity, at least. But another thing I went to go see was I actually got home for me and my mom's birthday this month, and we went to go see the new Bond film, the No Time to Die. I still think it's such a stupid fucking title.
The one with the Love Boat font.
Yeah, exactly. I thought it was okay. It's definitely the better one. It's definitely the best of the ones after Casino Royale. All the other ones kind of putzed around a bit and were kind of like all over with the tone. And this one was too, but it was at least kind of like, it felt like high enough stakes and like there's enough action sequences that I was like, yeah, this is actually pretty cool. Without wishing to spoil too much, they did establish this is the last Daniel Craig Bond movie. And I gotta say, how they resolved all that was kind of anticlimactic. And I was like, oh, I guess we're just done now. But there is apparently going to be more Bond films, though. I don't know who they'll be selecting for the next guy, but or girl, who knows. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. But yeah, no, it was solid. I don't know if I necessarily watched it again. Whereas like Casino Royale, I could literally rewatch any time. It's still my favorite spy movie. But I have also been playing a game, because actually for my birthday I got a new laptop that can actually play games decently.
Nice.
And it is a game with the spookiest concept of all, the breaching of workers' rights. It's called a Hard Space Shipbreaker. It's this like dystopian sci-fi future thing where you play as a shipbreaker, like a guy who disassembles and salvages ships, but it's in space.
Okay.
And so it's got your classic things of dystopia, like you are clearly working for a horribly abusive company. The moment you sign on, and on your first day you basically get dropped with a like 100 million dollar contract, and you have to like basically work your way up through the ranks. And it's like, oh, I guess we're just done now. But there is apparently going to be more Bond films, though. I don't know if I necessarily watched again. Whereas like Casino Royale, I could literally watch every time. It's still my favorite spy movie. I think it's a 1.2 trillion credit debt that you have to pay off before you can even start making your own money. But yeah, so it's got that sort of thing. It's got a decent. It's very much like, all the stories happening kind of in the background. Like the only thing you're really doing is just breaking ships apart, and like it's very. It's actually got a very Papers, Please vibe to it, in a sense of like the main gameplay is just doing this one particular monotonous task, but it's made interesting by some of the mechanics, and then there's also like some side objectives you have to kind of like balance with like potential reprimands and that sort of thing of like, you're trying to rebuild your own ship so you can eventually leave and just kind of do your own thing, but you have to balance it out with, if you salvage parts to make your ship work, it's gonna start putting up penalties against you.
That is very Papers, Please.
Yeah, it's not as in depth with the story as Papers, Please, obviously, but the rest of the gameplay I think personally makes up for it. It's very much one of those like, blue collar simulator games, but with a sci-fi twist. But I like it a lot. It can be a little janky. It's still in early access, but it's come along great. God knows it makes my fucking computer run hot, but still.
What is the style of this?
What is
the style of this game?
It's not quite realistic. It's got a bit of a cartoonish edge, but it's not like Borderlands level. It's like it's very kind of boxy graphics and everything. Each of the ships you go up against, like you take apart, are very modular, so they're kind of like you take chunks of them off at a time. But like one of the odd things you have is this big laser cutter that can cut like freeform holes and everything into the hull as you like kind of scrap it apart. So it's very technically impressive, and it doesn't try to do a whole lot with it. Like I said, all the stories just happens in like the background with like you have like a voice like your coworkers and stuff like have a voice channel they talk to you in, and like you pick up like audio logs and stuff. So as far as like the point for point stuff, it's pretty impressive.
That's all right. That's neat. I take it you're a big fan of sci-fi games.
Oh yeah,
in particular.
Sci-fi in general.
Over time I realize it's like, Stu's playing Rebel Galaxy, and it always seems to be very sci-fi based. It's a
genre I have a hard time disliking. Just because it's like, I'm a very optimistic person ultimately, and most sci-fis have some edge of optimism to them. That's kind of the whole point. And so it's just fun playing around with those sorts of things and just being like, there is rarely a situation that cannot be improved with the tag on the end of in space.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's a go-to for mine. So I like other genres otherwise, obviously, but they otherwise have to be pretty good for me to really enjoy them. Like that's the reason I love The Witcher so much, or Witcher 3 rather, and then the other Witcher content, obviously.
Yeah, new Witcher season,
yay,
is coming.
I'm so happy. But yeah, that's kind of the extent of it.
All right.
Don't think I've seen anything else. It's like I said, it's been a busy time. I'm sure I've forgotten something, but those are the big ones that have been more recently in mind.
I gotcha. Well, speaking of optimism, let's get devoid of all that.
Yeah, and except at the very end, except maybe not really in the second one. I don't know.
I don't believe so in the second. Well, maybe Fields. I don't know. Anyways. We're talking about Jacob's Ladder.
Why is it always Wheat Fields?
Firstly, we will be talking about Jacob's Ladder from 1990, directed by Adrian Lyne and written by Bruce Joel Rubin. On October 6, 1971, American infantryman Jacob Singer, played by Tim Robbins, is with the 1st Air Cavalry Division deployed in a village in Vietnam's Mekong Delta when his close-knit unit comes under sudden attack. As many of Jacob's comrades are killed or wounded, others exhibit abnormal behavior, with some suffering catatonia, convulsions, and seizures. Jacob flees into the jungle only to be stabbed with a bayonet by an unseen assailant. Jacob awakens in the New York City subway where, after glimpsing what he believes to be a tentacle protruding from a sleeping homeless person, an inexplicably locked subway station exit results in him almost being hit by a train. Now, the year is 1975. He works as a postal clerk and lives in a rundown apartment in Brooklyn with his girlfriend Jezebel, played by Elizabeth Pena. Jacob misses his old family and experiences visions of them, especially the youngest of his sons, Gabe, uncredited play by Macaulay Culkin, who had died in an accident before the war. Jacob is increasingly beset by disturbing experiences and apparitions, including glimpses of faceless vibrating figures, and narrowly escapes being run over by a pursuing car. He attempts to contact his regular doctor at the local VA hospital, but after first being told that there is no record of him ever being a patient there, Jacob is told that his doctor has died in a car explosion. At a party thrown by friends, a psychic reads Jacob's palm and tells him that he is already dead, which Jacob dismisses as a joke. After declining to dance with her, he appears to witness an enormous creature penetrating Jezzy before he collapses. At home, Jacob experiences a dangerous fever, which Jezzy attempts to bring down with a painful ice bath. Jacob briefly wakes up in another reality where he lives with his wife and sons, including a still-alive Gabe. First-person perspective scenes of apparent flashbacks to his time in Vietnam show Jacob, badly wounded, being discovered by American soldiers before being evacuated under fire in a helicopter. One of Jacob's former platoon mates, Paul, played by Pruitt Taylor Vince, contacts him to reveal he is suffering from similar experiences, but is soon afterwards killed when his car explodes. Commiserating after the funeral, other surviving members of the platoon confess that they have all been experiencing horrifying hallucinations. Believing that they are suffering the effects of a military experiment performed on them without their knowledge or consent, they hire a lawyer named Geary, played by Jason Alexander, to investigate. However, the lawyer quits the case after reading military files documenting that the soldiers were never in combat and were discharged for psychological reasons. Jacob's comrades soon back down, while Jacob suspects that they have been threatened into doing so. He is then abducted by suited men who try to intimidate him. Jacob fights them and escapes, but he is injured and nearly paralyzed in the process. He is taken to a nightmarish hospital where he is told he has been killed, and this is home. But soon after, his chiropractor friend Louis, played by Danny Aiello, comes to his rescue and heals him. Jacob is approached by a distressed man, played by Matt Craven, who was seen treating his wound in a medvac helicopter and who also dragged him away from Paul's burning car. Introducing himself as Michael Newman, he tells a story of having been a chemist with the Army's Chemical Warfare Division where he designed a drug he called the Ladder, which massively increased aggression. Michael claims that, to test the drug's effectiveness, a dose was secretly given to Jacob's unit before the battle, causing some of them to turn on each other in a homicidal frenzy. Michael's story triggers a vision of Jacob's wounding in Vietnam, which shows his attacker as a fellow American soldier. Jacob then returns to his family's home, where he finds Gabe, who takes him by the hand and leads him up the staircase into a bright light. The scene turns to a triage tent in 1971 as military doctors declare Jacob dead. Now for Jacob's Ladder 2019, directed by David Rosenthal and written by Jeff Bueller and Sarah Thorpe. The movie opens in Afghanistan, where Jacob Sanger, played by Michael Ealy, performs his duties as an army medic until, mid-surgery, he discovers that he is working on his brother Isaac, played by Jesse Williams. After a brief breakdown, we seemingly cut to present day, where Jacob is out of the military working as a surgeon at the VA, and he is currently spaced out while in the middle of a procedure. These events appear to be happening more and more frequently, along with headaches, which is interrupting his daily routine and forcing him to reevaluate whether he is needed or even making a difference as a doctor. According to his wife Samantha, played by Nicole Berry, not only is he making a difference at the VA, but also to her and their son Gabe. However, things are intensified by the amount of veterans who are dying of overdose. One such case happening in the office as Jacob is talking with his co-worker Hoffman, played by Guy Burnett. Jacob is confronted outside of work the next day by a man named Paul Rudiger, played by Joseph Sikora, who claims to have served in Isaac's troop, and he tells Jacob that Isaac is not only alive somewhere in the city, but in need of his brother's help. Jacob ponders on this, reflecting on the fact that even though he misses his brother, they never had the greatest relationship, only for things to escalate further, as he not only begins to hallucinate strange beings around the city and on the subway, but he is even attacked by what appears to be a demon in his own home. This is a secret that he keeps from his wife. After this attack, he is again confronted by Paul, who takes him down to the subway tunnels, stating that his brother is among the homeless population living down there. Before revealing too much, however, Paul is pushed in front of an oncoming subway train by an elderly woman who flees before Jacob can react. Jacob attempts to report this to the police, though they claim no body was found, and he leaves before they deem him insane. This is where he decides to investigate for himself. Upon entering the tunnels, he does stumble upon a large homeless encampment, and due to recognizing his brother's arm tattoo, finds Isaac and brings him home. Isaac begins bleeding, so Jacob and Samantha run an ice bath for him to help. The next morning, while Isaac is resting, Jacob discovers a vial of the drug veterans have been ODing on among Isaac's belongings. He takes the vial to the home of his coworker Hoffman, who states that the drug is HDA and was created to help veterans with PTSD, but was soon recalled due to dangerous side effects. Jacob is now determined to find out who is still pushing this onto the homeless vet population. He confronts his brother about the drug, tells his wife about the people out to get him, and convinces his wife to take their child to a hotel to hide while everything is settled. After more assaults, confrontations, and hallucinations of vague monstrous beings, Jacob catches his brother with his arm around his wife and throws him against the wall, threatening him before Samantha tells Jacob to just leave. After this, Jacob has a flashback to his wedding, where his brother constantly was getting handsy with Samantha and gave an atrociously drunken best man speech before punching Jacob out on stage. After this, Jacob decides to go back to Samantha and Isaac for a final confrontation. However, upon arriving, he discovers that the two are claiming to have been married this entire time. All of the photos are of the two of them together, and this means that not only has Jacob not ever been married, but that Gabe is not his child either. Things begin to get crazy as Jacob realizes that he was the quote-unquote trash brother this whole time, and that he has been imagining an ideal life for himself. After which he bums around the city and the subway tunnels beneath, before eventually hooking up and having sex with a woman that he imagines to be either a demon or an angel. Of course, this is a hallucination too, as he was convulsing due to his own intake of HDA, and the woman that took him in called Isaac to come help. Jacob flees Isaac in pursuit as he goes to talk to Hoffman in his lab, as Hoffman the entire time has been the one remanufacturing and doling out HDA to the homeless vets in an attempt to cure them of their PTSD. Of course, according to Jacob himself, the side effects are that it takes the painful memories and substitutes fake ideal lives in their place, and is addicting because of it, which is also what is leading to the intense addictions and overdoses. Isaac threatens to call the police and shut the lab down. Hoffman then pulls out a gun to shoot Isaac, but before he can, Jacob tackles him and they both go flying out of the window to their deaths. The last we see is police on their way as Isaac cradles Jacob outside, and a brief scene of Jacob frolicking in a wheat field.
Because it's always a damn wheat field.
That is the end of that, and we will now go into a quick full circle.
Yeah, I figured.
So, as hinted at, there is only one connection this time around for Full Circle, and that is the late Danny Aiello, who played Louis in Jacob's Ladder, 1990, and was Tony Rosado in The Godfather Part 2 from 1974. And, of course, Danny Aiello died about a month before we did that Godfather... No, he died like the week of the recording of that Godfather episode, so we talked in depth about his death back in the Godfather episode, so...
Almost forgot about that.
Yes. So, that is it for the plot in the Full Circle, if you want to take things off for me.
Sure. Good Lord. You have talked about this movie a bunch since we've known each other. I've never seen it. I knew it was the, I guess, primary inspiration behind the Silent Hill games. And I can 100% see that. Yeah, wow. God, the fucking visuals in this. And honestly, reading through just the trivia of this one alone was a pretty good blast, because a lot of it's like, you know, just how the director and the cinematographer, I think it was, them kind of discussing like what they want the visuals to be, because originally they were going to do, obviously there's a very big element to the concept of like heaven and hell going on all throughout the first one. And originally they were actually going to make it look very classically biblical. Yeah, keep your fucking your charts marked. That's the first one of the day.
Yes.
But yeah, like they were going to do like the classic like demons with hooves and horns and wings and all that sort of stuff. And the director of it was just kind of like, see, I don't really like that. And apparently he got inspiration from like there was apparently some kind of like neonatal disease. Like apparently there was some product that pregnant women would take that was supposedly supposed to give make your kid healthy, but it just gave them like these really horrible mutilations. Essentially, apparently there was a lot of inspiration around like the quote unquote demons throughout the film, like the doctor with like the face all scrunched up with no eyes and all that sort of thing. And I just think that's just fascinating and also really creepy, Mr. Director. My God.
Yeah. It's better than because I do know what you're talking about. I didn't know the cinematographer was involved as well. But
I gotta double check.
I know that the source material, what this was based on, and I think the screenwriting adaptation of it were more heavenly or more blatant about heaven and hell and like real demons. So yeah. I like the fact that they did not go that route.
Yeah, no, but yeah, that was. But then compare that to 2019, where they kind of did.
Yeah,
not so explicitly, but there were a few scenes where I was like, "All right, come on," like the one where he was high and like when he was high and like having sex with the one
near the end of the movie, and
yeah, and like all of a sudden she turns into like a siren, or it's like with wings and everything, or like I guess it'd be a siren.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, that's
like, or harpy, sorry. But yeah, and I just saw that, I was like, really? And then like, of course, and throughout all the rest of the movie, where it just had all the really creepy faced people who are like, oh, they're all like veiny and like kind of gray and stuff. Like, what fucking? That's the best you got? You have CG on your side, and that's the best you came up with.
You could. Maybe try a little harder. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just be a more creative in a sense, I guess. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, it's yeah. There's gonna be a lot of bashing, but I will say before I go further into the inevitable bashing, this did turn out the remake was a lot better than I was expecting. It wasn't quite Easy Rider the way back levels. Nowhere near that, in fact. And it's just kind of a mess. Like, I know the original was meant to be kind of like vague and like have a lot of like symbolism and everything. It's like, it's supposed to be kind of confusing. This one, the remake, was just kind of confusing for the fact of like, I didn't necessarily know where they were going. Even like at the end when they were kind of establishing everything, I was like, and I know it's like, I have to respect it for the fact that it didn't go the explicit route of this literally was just a dying vision and how like this guy reacted in the end. But at the same time, like, I would have liked some kind of direct closure for the situation, because like you can't have a movie named after the literal biblical the biblical story of Jacob's ladder and like not have it be a bit more explicit.
Yeah, and not to mention the fact that, like you said, I could never really tell where it was going, and in the end, it didn't feel like it went anywhere.
Yeah,
and what I mean by that, obviously, it did have a twist, if you want to call it that, which I guess you can, because that's very direct interpretation of what a twist is, but the movie it seems to fancy itself as being really clever, I think.
Yeah.
Just in that it builds these specific scenes up and then post the twist. We have a lot of flashbacks that occur to sort of correct original misconceptions that you've been led to believe about the characters, instead of just having things happen naturally or the discovery happen naturally. It's just it's almost like at a point in the movie they're showing off like, okay, this is the master lie that we told. And it feels like so much is put into that they didn't actually think about a resolution that went anywhere.
Yeah. And like I gotta say, I predicted the twist about 20 minutes in. Once they started having like the flashback scenes, but of the moment where it's like, oh, it's where his brother supposedly was shot. But and yet this guy is having those visions. I was immediately like, he's his brother. He's the other guy. I was like, God damn it, movie, come on. And like, it's hard to even say. I wouldn't even necessarily say that Jacob's the original had necessarily a hard twist. Like, I know at the very end it's meant to be like, oh, it's like the big twist is like, oh, he's actually dead. He actually is dead. This wasn't just like hallucinations and stuff. He was literally being pursued by demons. But at the same time, it's done in such a more subtle way that it doesn't really matter at that point.
Right.
It feels more like kind of like a reassurance that yes, this was all actually technically happening in a sense of none of it was actually happening. It's like, okay, cool. It didn't really expect it to be like a big like, whoa, I feel betrayed kind of moment, or like, oh, I feel so confused. It's like, no, it really just kind of had a pretty soft send off for the whole situation, which I actually really liked.
Yeah. And like I said, comparing it to the 2019 one, it doesn't. The original doesn't feel like it's trying to give a twist or do a twist like what you said. It's just more so confirming your thoughts on the whole thing, because the biblical stuff is so front and center from the beginning, where he wakes up on the subway train and he sees the poster that says hell. He comments on how Louis looks like an angel in the light that's behind him. Like, it's not like it's trying to hide the themes. And obviously, if you know the story of Jacob's Ladder from the Bible, like, it connects it even more. Whereas, with the exception of, like, him being attacked near the end by that woman he's having sex with, the remake doesn't really play into any of that. And like you said, the Jacob's Ladder doesn't really come into it either.
Yeah.
Except maybe at the literal last 5 to 10 seconds, depending on how you interpret that.
Yeah, because like with how it's interpreted everything and how it shows off everything going on there, I can firmly say that I truly believe none of it was actually like any kind of dying vision or anything, and it really was just like he was hallucinating because he was like horribly addicted, which like is could have been its own thing. It seems like it's so tied to the original concept and just that it doesn't seem to actually mean anything. Like they bring up the fact of, the concept of the ladder has an actual in movie meaning in the original, where it's like, oh, that's the name of the drug that these guys were given to go crazy. Just falling straight down the ladder, like it relating to Jacob, but then also has like the biblical aspect.
Yeah.
And it just seems like they just try to tack it on in the new one. I gotta say, to that end, there's a lot of moments where I was like, oh, they just went ahead and said it. With like a lot of moments in the movie, like when they first bring up the idea of the ladder and like the Paul Rudiger character first brings up, oh, they're giving these drugs to vets and everything. And I was like, oh, they just went out and said it. Okay.
Yeah, we're not hiding it because...
Yeah, like the ladder is a drug, and that the center of this whole thing is going to be on the drugs. Which, when I did hear it, and then I started listening and like watching it, I was like, okay, yeah, that's actually kind of a cool concept. They're centering it on the drug itself, and it's actually making it a bit more of a mysterious situation. But it didn't really go anywhere too big with that. It was a pretty generic idea of like, oh, drug addiction, and like how this particular drug is like screwing with your perception and therefore screws with the perception of like the audience and everything. But to that end, it didn't even use that correctly, because there were a lot of moments where one of the trivia effects for the original that I really actually like is that all of Jacob's hallucinations, he is never in frame when we are being shown them. like all the moments where we're seeing like anything demonic or something non-human or whatever, Jacob is not in frame at all. And so it's giving you this impression of, oh, this is directly what his perception is and no one else's. There's a lot of moments in the remake where it doesn't do that. There's a lot of things that are like happening, like the classic, like, oh, there's a guy standing in the background that he doesn't see, and then he's gone when he turns back. It's like, what's the fucking point of that? Like,
to try and create, yeah, and there's a lot of fucking like action movie fight scenes too.
Yeah, it's got a lot of very generic elements going on that it really just kind of. I think if it had played more, this is a rare case where I'm like, I like what it did on its own, but also I think it should have leaned on it in the right ways back to the original. Because if it had done that, I think it could have done really well. Of being like, okay, yeah, we're seeing literally a dude drugged out of his mind, and this is what he perceives.
Yeah, because I don't think it's inherently bad, but you're going out of your way to tie it into this cult classic movie that has become a staple of horror.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to tie it back to that, so already that connection is there, and you're pulling in elements from that and presumably the source material, like the ice bath and the drugs and the war, things like that. But if you had made it its own thing and maybe tried to make the themes a bit more coherent, then I would have enjoyed this movie a lot more. But instead it felt messy because it felt like it was trying to do its own thing, but also trying to make it very clear that it was a remake of a pre-existing thing, but then also it's trying to put more emphasis on the homeless vet situation and drug epidemic and PTSD, which are hot button issues, but it doesn't nail down a point of actually commenting on it, really. Yeah. It's like all these things are going on. There's no real coherent thesis as to what this movie should be about.
Yeah, it just kind of ends with like, oh, this pharmacist guy is just using these guys as lab rats, and it's just like, what? Okay, that's not even remotely close to the reality of the issue, but okay, I guess we gotta have something to close this out. We gotta have a single villain that we gotta be able to kill. Because again, another generic element that there has to be a villain. Whereas like the original really didn't have one. Like they kind of like, I guess the villain is hell itself. But even that is more just like, it's more man versus nature at that point than man versus man.
It is. His mind is kind of the villain, I guess, if I want to sound pretentious as hell.
Man versus
just
self.
Because, yeah, it's making his belief makes it seem like everyone else around him is out to get him. Even like, not explicit characters like the nurse at the clinic where he goes to talk to his therapist, or like Jason Alexander's character is the lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, these guys are fucking assholes, but they're really not. They're doing their job, and they have a very different set of information than what Tim Robbins' character has. And so it feels like the world is out to get him when it's really not.
Also, I do like the fact that you have called him Tim Robbins' character instead of just Jacob, because I imagine that's kind of. I imagine this movie's weird for you.
To a degree, dude. I've seen this movie multiple times, but since I was watching it for the podcast, I guess I was paying more attention to background things I hadn't noticed. I swear, the surgeon in that nightmarish hospital scene, they call him Dr. Stuart.
Oh, what the fuck?
And I rewound it. I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, I think I just remember that. Yeah, they do. What the hell? I'm so sorry, my friend.
No, that's okay. I needed it.
But yeah, like I really do hate how many generic elements the 2019 version has, because it just does so many of the classic. Like, how many times is it going to do the friggin' thing where it's like one? Well, I have 2 points to this fact. One being, how many times is it going to do the stupid thing where it's like, oh, there is something that the audience sees that the character doesn't, and then all of a sudden it's gone, or like, person mysteriously disappears with no like real way of being able to do that. Whoa, it's like that's not scary. There's never once been scary movies. Come on.
This is a very boo movie.
Very. Oh yeah. And that's kind of like, and I could go on about the jump scares as well, but it kind of goes to the same point.
Yeah, we've discussed that in the past with things like Halloween, and when we covered the Omen, because the 2006 Omen was really guilty of that. So
yeah. Another point I had to it is like, it kind of thinking about the paranoia that the Jacob character is going through in both movies. The one in the original feels very justified, and it's like, okay, yeah, this dude is literally watching reality basically form around him to choke him to death, essentially. And so, yeah, it makes sense that he's having these moments of genuine fear and paranoia. The 2019 one, he just kind of lapses immediately into paranoia out of nowhere, it feels like the classic, like no real direction to it all. And he started going to, like, especially when they were in the hotel room together, like, and his brother was kind of like consoling what he thought to be his wife, and like in context and everything, like obviously if you know the twist, like, yeah, it kind of makes sense, but in context in that moment, it's just like he just kind of flips out immediately, and he just all of a sudden goes into this paranoia rant. Like he gets to the conclusion that Hoffman is the villain like immediately, not for the fact of like he's been chased this whole time, but just now that he's going to see Hoffman, now that he's got a hit squad against him, that immediately confirms his suspicions, which I didn't think he had suspicions to that point. And I was like, what the hell is going on? Where did this character come from?
Yeah.
He really did it was a noticeable shift. He went from like, okay, he's kind of the more on the level type of the whole group to he is the crazy guy. It's like, you're supposed to build that a little.
Yeah, it's like an instant, and again, I guess you know what this I actually like this better than some previous ones like Easy Rider, where it's just ragging on the new one, and then it's like, oh, we've been talking about the bad things, we haven't gone back to the new one, or back to the old one, because this time everything we're saying about the new one we immediately tie back into the original because there's a direct comparison to be made, and there is like an idea here.
Yeah.
Which I like. But to that end, like you were saying, in the original, Jacob has a very... He's justified in being paranoid kind of explicitly because not only is the world out to get him, but everyone that is currently close to him, he sees them as out to get him. Louis, which is like his angel in this situation, is the only person that doesn't really come across as malevolent at any point. Even Jezebel, which is on the nose, but whatever.
Yeah.
Played by Elizabeth Pena. Even her, like, she'll help in some scenes, but in others, she's completely fed up. And there's one where she screams at him to get his attention, and her eyes go black, and he freaks out. And like that's supposed to be, I don't know, his girlfriend, that they're just co-workers, but they sort of live together. I'm not and they sleep together sometimes. But she's supposed to be like the closest person in his life at this point, and even she's not having any of it. Yeah. Whereas in the remake, everything up until the twist, it seems like it's an outside force that's like breaking its way into reality or something.
Yeah. And like, it all made sense why the character was doing it in the original, because it's like they were literally driving him towards his bad tendencies of not being able to let go, of being like, yeah, like just pushing him into his bad habits and everything. Hence, Jezebel just being of temptation.
Yeah.
And so it was meant to be them driving him to hell versus like if he let go, they would actually enable him to escape into heaven. But there really wasn't any major reasoning behind it happening in the 2011 one, other than people just being what the fuck is going on, which is a valid enough reason. And that is the worst part about all of this. Like, is that I see so much reason and logic going on in the 2018 one that could have made it great. It could have been a really cool story to be had, but I don't know whether or not it needed to lean more into the Jacob's Ladder concept or less. Because, like, if it leans more into it, it gets, like, the actual, like, morality elements and the biblical twist to it. But it would lose the logical elements that I like. And if it leaned away from it, I feel like it would just end up being kind of a generic thriller. So I don't know what it's missing.
Yeah, I think you're right. I guess if it were me, who is not qualified as a director, cinematographer, screenwriter, anything. I guess I would try to move away from the Jacob's Ladder elements just because they're so sparse to begin with in the remake. And I feel like if they went more in that direction, they would either get muddy with all of the hot button issue talk that they're trying to do around PTSD and how we treat our vets and things like that. Or they would have to drop it entirely for it to make sense. And I actually do kind of like that element. You know, it's present in the original, but that's not the driving force. That's not like the thesis of the movie necessarily. But I feel like the remake was moving more in that direction, and I think they should have focused more on that. But who knows if that would have been any good? Like you said, it probably just would have been a generic whatever movie that I wouldn't even ever see because it has no ties to one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
So,
and I guess that kind of is the problem with the original, is that it's codified that idea of like, you know, what are we truly seeing? Is it just a drug hallucination kind of thing? And a lot of like very generic thrillers have done that as a result. Yeah. Which I guess I can't give it too much shit because this is, even in the trivia for this one, the original gained inspiration from the short film Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge.
Oh, yes. I'm familiar.
The Twilight, which was shown as a Twilight Zone episode, but was a standalone short film on its own. But personally, one of my favorite short films of all time.
I actually didn't know it was like its own short film. I was just like, yeah, Twilight Zone has had a couple of longer episodes. I've seen the whole series. I just thought it was a longer episode with more money behind it.
I think this one was made on its own. I think it even won an award. It may have. I don't know whether it was an Oscar or not for short film. But yeah, I think Twilight Zone was given the rights to be able to show it on their show because like not a lot of folks are going to would have been able to see it then like around those days.
Yeah.
But yeah. Point being, it does suck whenever movies are classic enough that they start making things become generic. But to that, and also like, and we've talked about biblical on and off. I do gotta say, I do like how the original didn't overdo it. Like there were elements where it's like, it's clearly meant to be the idea of like, you know, classic Christian heaven and hell, but it wasn't like the Omen level where it literally was just taking scripture. It was like, it really just felt like this is just a reinterpretation of the original Jacob's Ladder story. And I was like, oh, that's actually really cool, though they didn't go kind of hammy with it.
I like that, yeah. I think the most direct that it does get with the biblical stuff might be Jezebel, just even in name or all the biblical names. But to that end, like the Jacob character calls it out too.
Yeah.
That like, how could you not know about biblical names? Your name, do you not know where your name derives from? Like it's not like they're trying to wink at you necessarily.
Yeah. And I think it's just barely skirting that edge of foreshadowing of like, it's not done so hard and direct that it's like, okay, this actually is planting the seed in people's in people's minds versus it just being like, this is the conceit of the film.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay.
I'll let you go ahead and have your point. I do have a smaller point just with like, actually just like production level stuff.
Ooh, okay.
So I'll let you go and have your thing.
For October, this was the movie I picked for October. Every year, the two of us get one horror movie episode.
Yep.
But that's something I wanted to ask you is with both of the films, not necessarily ranking them, but I guess you can if you want. Were you scared or creeped out by either of these?
I think for the context of when I was watching them, I wasn't necessarily in a mood to get scared, so not necessarily, but I will say the hospital hell scene in the original was right creepy. Like I hate that sort of shit. I got a mild fear of the Doctor, but that especially, like, I loved what they were doing with it. It's like, and you and I both, you know, we both kind of talked about our love of like the ideas of horror and everything. We both listened to Magnus Archives and like how like freaky it can get. And so I'm a sucker for like creative, like creative ideas for like like what at the time would have been an unorthodox kind of horror scene. Like they even said in the in the trivia, like they wanted to have originally a very classical biblical hell scene where he like is literally getting jabbed at by like devils and stuff, but he was really worried that was going to come off as comical, and so he came up with the idea of the hospital, even to the point of the gurney that he's on. They raised one of the legs up very slightly to make one of the wheels do that like kick out and spin really chaotically thing.
That great.
Which I was like, God,
all those great shots.
It's amazing. It's an inspired scene. That one was probably the best, like creepiest scene for me. And I think if I were in a different context, if I were like, watching it like deeper at night or that sort of thing, or if I just was in a different mindset, it probably would have creeped me out a lot more. But that was definitely the big one. For the remake, I was expecting more to happen in the homeless encampment. That was definitely, when I first got to the theater, I was like definitely a little on edge of being like, okay, this could get freaky, because I figured that if they were doing the direct biblical element, that was going to be their like descent into hell moment of like, this is literally where these damned souls are unable to escape, which they didn't really end up doing. But I think that would have been the best scene for me, just like whenever they were down there, because it really just seemed like, okay, this is the area in the movie where they can do whatever the hell they want. But they didn't really do much with it.
Yeah, they had a decent amount of obviously jump scares, whatever, but like these actual close-up scenes, not even necessarily obscured in darkness, of these CGI demons to try and hammer this horror across, but I think it's too, I don't know, I think it's too blatant. Yeah. And that's one of the things a lot of horror movies try to do, is if they have a monster or something, they try to obscure it in darkness, because the moment you see the whole thing, usually you're just not scared of it anymore, because we haven't really gotten to that point. And I think one of the great things about the original, and how it, obviously not really any jump scares or whatever, but we're able to see these creatures or demons or whatever, but they're not like classical demons with sharp teeth necessarily. They're either humans with deformities or like skin covering their eyes or things like that, and then just briefly masked by shadow, or they just look like ghouls. Yeah. Like you only see it briefly near the beginning of the film when he's being chased down by that car, and then after he manages to dodge it as the car is driving away, in the back window you just see like this pale white face that's kind of obscured by the back window, and it's like, it's not like this horrific demon or anything. It looks like a sort of like a ghostly, ghoulish mess of skin. Yeah, almost. That's enough to creep me out.
Oh yeah, big time. Nothing like deformities.
But yeah, in terms of like traditional scares, I don't find either of these films to be scary. But I always hype up the original Jacob's Ladder, and I've seen it so many times, and it's not my favorite movie, but it is my favorite horror movie, because it's the only one where every time I watch it, there are just certain scenes where I get that hair-raising chill, and like I get that chill over my whole body, and I love that feeling. And a lot of it happens in the hospital, as you were saying, but there's one I've mentioned on the show before, and I've mentioned to countless friends. It's my favorite scene in the movie. And I am only bringing this up again to compare it to the same scene in the remake. But when he is being comforted by his family in the original, after the hospital scene, and this isn't Jezebel, this is Samantha and his two kids that are still alive. He's being comforted by them. And then you just hear a voice off screen just go, "Dream on," and he looks at it and he just starts freaking out. You don't see anything. It doesn't cut to some figure. There's not like a scream. And that's like the scariest thing in the movie to me, and I get chills every single time I see it. I love it so much. And it's getting that feeling across without barely doing anything. Yeah. And they try to go for that same thing in the remake, but it kind of falls flat, and I think primarily I don't. The good thing about the original is that I've seen it so many times I can recall details like that, but the new one I don't even remember what the voice says. Do you? It's not "Dream On." It's something different. I remember.
I don't think so. Like I cannot. I think a lot of those also like they had like a lot of like indistinct whispering moments. Like even the subtitles call it that.
Yeah.
So I don't even know if it was something specific. It's something that it would not be worth going back over to find it because it's like it didn't really feel like it meant anything.
Okay. Well, I remember because that is my favorite scene in the original. When it came up, I remember taking note of it in my mind, like, oh, that's weird that it was changed to this. I just don't remember what it said. But anyways, it's like the voice of a little girl, and it's like a whisper. In the original, it's a man just stating it outright, like "Dream on," just saying it like that. But this new added effect of being just some indistinct little girl whispering makes it seem like it's supposed to be a ghost. And immediately I lose all tension in that scene, and it doesn't give me anywhere near the same effect because they tried to go more towards the horror route instead of just letting the emotions lay where they were and then letting the main character, in this case Michael Ealy, bring it home with an acting performance of a freakout, at the sound of it. But even his performance can't even save it because I don't know if they were overly confident or not confident enough. I can't really decide there.
Yeah. I will say, though, I did like the actor in the remake.
I did. I thought he was good.
And to the point of that scene, I always figured that voice was... in the original was the who I call Spazzy Head, who I assumed was just like the devil. But the whole point of it is that it's meant to be vague and meant to be creepy, and I did love that scene a lot.
Yeah,
it's
great. That was my whole thing. I did want to get the horror aspect on that and what you felt about it, but I also wanted to bring up that specific scene because there's only 2 or 3 scenes in the remake that are sort of directly pulled from the original, and that's one of them. Yeah. And since it's my favorite scene, I wanted to talk about it. But
they have a brief moment where Jacob's head shakes really fast, and I was like, he's not even the character that does that.
Yeah, why is his head vibrating? Because he's coming to the realization that his life is fragmenting. I get it, but like I don't know.
It still doesn't even look as cool.
It doesn't. It looks like an After Effect.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure it was because like in the original they just filmed the guy shaking his head a bunch, and then they played it back at 4 frames a second, or like they filmed it at 4 frames a second and then played it at normal speed, and so that's why it looks so legit because it is.
That's what you get just from good editing. Like editing can save a lot of things.
Good editing, good just practical effects and stuff like that. Like my God.
Yeah.
I'm so fucking... And this is a very quick tangent. I saw a tweet about someone was kind of defending like Marvel's tendency to overuse CG. Their defense being, do you guys really expect them to go to like an alien planet to film this? And I'm like, y'all really have completely not learned about the concept of practical effects or even sets, have you? Like, y'all are so lost.
That's a bizarre take too. That someone would assume if it's not computers that we have to fly to an alien planet. That's such a weird leap in logic too.
That's really along those lines of like you're talking to someone like you're talking like some general philosophical thing, and then they throw some insane thing around there. It's like the John Mulaney joke. It's like, I don't know if I believe in the death penalty. So you're telling me if you saw Hitler walking down the road, you wouldn't kill him? It's like, that's not what I was saying, but okay, let's talk about this.
That's exactly what it is.
Exactly. It's like fucking, first of all, that concept is the stupidest shit I've ever heard, and it's not going to happen. Second of all, fuck off. But yeah, it's to that end. Love the practical effects in the original. There were basically none in the remake.
Yeah.
But with that, I will also say, kind of tying into the idea of the remake, the particular scenes they remade, one that made me think about was like the ice bath scene. Just the general, and this is kind of like a more production kind of thing. Um, there's a tendency in modern movies to make all their environments and all their scenes very clean, and making it very like I've seen comparisons with actually the original Scream movie, and then it's some of its remakes. Um, like they'll have sets and kitchens that look like a normal person's kitchen. There's clutter, there's stuff on the counters, there's stuff all over the place. And the remakes of everything, it's these like picturesque Instagram looking fucking kitchens and stuff, where it's like everything is so prim and in its place and everything. I get a lot of that between the 1990 and the 2019 Jacob's Ladders, because it really, you do feel, and I've talked about this ad nauseum before, but there is a chaos and various kind of like dishevelment that older movies tend to get a lot better than a lot of modern ones, because it seems like they're just afraid to do that sort of thing nowadays. I guess with the quality of cameras and everything, you feel more pressure to be like, okay, if we make this area dirty, it's going to look really, really dirty. But like the whole scene in the bathtub scene in the original, it's got the entire like floor of the apartment building like helping him out. It's this cacophony of noise and people like talking and like trying to like get him into the situation. And the other one, it's just kind of this like weird, almost Enya-esque music video of just this dude going into a bathtub. It just kind of loses all impact.
Yeah, and it's weird because I think with the ice bath and the remake, they were trying to make it more dreamlike or like esoteric, but those scenes of like chaos and people running around and like shouting at each other, that puts a real pit in my stomach. If you want to make me feel uncomfortable, that's one of the ways to do it, is like just have a lot of things happening and then the character you're supposed to side with can't do anything about it. Yeah. Like I get real queasy at stuff like that. But that's something else that you were mentioning is every time it would cut to their house or Isaac's house or whoever's house it is in the remake, it looks like a display set at Ashley Home Furniture. Like it doesn't resemble anything even close to being lived in, and that doesn't mean that you have to live like a slob. Like I clean up after myself and I keep things as tidy as I can, but you know, it doesn't look anything like that. Just a pure clean home, especially when you have a kid.
Oh yeah,
when you have a kid that's that young. Like, don't even try to tell me that you don't just have things everywhere. You've even had time to clean up because it's like, oh, the baby's crying again. Sorry, I don't have time to wipe down the counter. Like, yeah. I don't know.
And even like the scenes where it's meant to be like these super dirty, disheveled moments, like it mostly just feels like they just kind of put a darker filter over it. Like even when they're in the homeless encampment, it doesn't actually look that chaotic.
Yeah,
I've seen homeless encampments. They are not pretty.
There's like 2 bungalows and a single guy on a cot.
Yeah.
In the homeless encampment in the remake.
Which for all the world, it really just looks like someone to just put up like a fence around some area under an overpass. Which, again, is what a homeless encampment essentially is, but it is very weird given their situation of being underground.
Yeah. And here's a slight tangent as well. Sort of like the tangent you had earlier. We each get one.
Yay. We each had like 6.
What you were mentioning with the... oh my god, I already lost it. What you were mentioning with the chaos of the ice bath scene and like the noisiness, just being able to pin that down. That's something that you hear a lot in animation discourse, especially comparing new cartoons to the cartoons of the 90s. And it's always, you know, because we do digital now, it's so much easier to just be like, okay, this is the model sheet for the character, draw it like that, and this is the color, these are the shades. Whereas there's a lot of grungier aspects to a lot of and not just 90s shows, but this is the comparison I'm making. Not just because we were doing cell animation for a big portion of the 90s before the switch to digital later on, but it was just easier to be like, okay, this is the color, I guess, this is the color. We're using actual watercolors and pastels. That's like comparing the first season of SpongeBob to the third, you know, to pick a show that I know you're a big fan of. And just looking at the sort of grimy, rustic feel and the colors of the first season compared to the more digital aspects of the third season, it's really apparent. And that applies to sound design too, because Rocko's Modern Life is one of the noisiest cartoons ever made. Every time someone takes a step or grabs onto something or turns something on, everything has a sound effect associated with it. And you can't do that nowadays. Or people think you can't do that nowadays because it's horribly annoying. And to be fair, it is. But I think it adds to the charm of the chaotic 90s.
Oh, yeah. I'm reminded of, there's a scene in Invader Zim where Zim and Dib are on opposite sides of a street, meant to be talking over, like, traffic, even though there's no traffic. And it's such a funny scene just because of all that, like, chaotic noise going on.
Yeah, it's just shouting back and forth.
Zim! What? Yeah, no, I definitely see exactly what you mean. And of course, this was a movie, Jacob's Ladder is from 1990. It really kind of hit that kind of golden point there. I tend to lean back on Trading Places as kind of that kind of gold standard of, like, here's how you have a chaotic movie that is still, like, able to be understood to a degree. Just the entire, like, end trading scene that they have going on, like, in the stock exchange. Yeah. It's just bedlam, and I adore it to death. It's one of my favorite scenes in any movie ever. And so it's just, you just lose it with the modern, like just modern digital stuff. Like, I recognize that, a lot of, you're gonna have to use digital stuff nowadays, but it gets used so much as, like, the whole damn platform rather than just, like, a crutch to hold it up. It's like, you're meant to kind of add elements of it more to just flesh out the rest of your stuff.
Yeah.
Talk to Guillermo del Toro for that.
He's great. He's great at keeping practical stuff alive.
Oh, yeah.
Even just Shape of Water just a few years ago has a lot of really great scenes that computers may... I'm not going to say they straight weren't used, because they probably were used to assist a lot of those, but it's not like the whole film was CGI'd.
Oh, yeah. Big time. Yeah, that's kind of like my ending for no pun intended, damning kind of, like, comment on the both of them. It's just like, you don't get that kind of bedlam aspect in the new one, as with many newer movies. And that really just lends to the whole situation. Like, even what it's meant to be the safe zones, essentially, for Jacob, like, in the chiropractor's office, even there, like, it's not necessarily trim and prim and proper and everything. It's a very dark environment, but that just makes all the light elements pop out more, which is the whole point.
And it's like a huge warehouse with a single cot in the middle of it, and then just brief light shining through. I don't even know if it's an actual window. It looks like bars over a window. It looks like a scene out of Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah.
Out of an episode of Tales from the Crypt. It's wild.
And it still gives the impression of it being a truly habitable and safe spot compared to the rest of Jacob's life.
Yeah.
And so it just it's able to just make everything pop out better with the whole film. So it's hard not to praise it for all that, and then to lambast the new one, because my God, it got very murky with its colors by the end. Even when he goes to heaven at the end, it's still kind of like washed out.
Yeah, it looks... When he goes to heaven, are you talking about the wheat field scene?
Well, yeah, what I assume to be heaven, because it's a wheat field.
Yeah, I don't know what it was, but it looked like that was filmed in the 60s. I don't know if it was the colors or if they had a filter on the camera or something to try and make it more heavenly or something, but it looked really old.
It felt like a recruitment video for a cult.
Yeah. Yeah.
It looked like it looked like the intro video they show to Mormon missionaries. Hey!
Ayo!
Mormonism is a cult.
Finally, the Mormons are getting their just desserts.
Yeah. All their weird underwear and multiple wives.
Weird underwear was the first of those two things.
Yeah.
But yes, I don't believe I have any further thoughts on these. I did not want for this to be shooting fish in a barrel, and I don't think it was, because I think we both brought up elegant points on the pros of the remake and what it could have done better.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a complete teardown like we've had multiple times in the past.
Yes.
But that being said, I've been very clear in the past as well that the original Jacob's Ladder is my favorite horror movie because it has all of the elements that I actually enjoy in horror. Enjoy it in a horror movie that I actually find creepy and disturbing, because I like goofy slasher whatever too. But in the actual genre, it's my favorite and it can't be beat. And I did not think that the 2019 one would even come close. I just thought this would be an interesting discussion and just another pedestal for me or soapbox to stand on to talk about why I love the 1990s one.
Yeah. And now I get to stand at least, beside you near the soapbox and be like, yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
I think
that's all I ever wanted.
Yeah. I think ultimately horror movies will never really creep me out too bad. I think classical like horror, like Magnus Archives was one of the few horror things that have ever actually done anything for me. But otherwise, it still had a lot of creepy elements, this one. So it's hard not to love it. And also, be fearful of it.
Yes.
Which is, so many aspects of life.
Hey, I've redeemed myself from the Easy Rider episode.
Yay, now you get to go to heaven.
Yay. Only to tear myself down in my next pick.
Jesus. Oh, man. Well, hopefully my next pick is a bit more, not necessarily grounded, but I don't think it deals with demons.
Inner demons, for sure.
Yeah, but that's all movies.
I guess so.
You have some cartoon movie to bring in there, but I'm like, I can't do off the cuff edgy internet theories like that. I'm like, oh, Ed, Ed and Eddie, it's all in purgatory or whatever.
Oh, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Fucking who gives a shit?
Benji the Hunted is a coma dream.
I like the opposite route where they take something really dark and make it really lighthearted. Like Game of Thrones is just a really overly intense D&D game.
Yeah, that one. It's hard to get into those because they're always so bland and uninteresting.
Yeah.
This is a coma. This is a death dream. Everyone's dead the whole time. Angelica is seeing dead babies. It's okay.
The only
internet.
The only batshit theory I will ever defend is the one where have you ever heard of the movie Snowpiercer?
Yeah, we watched it. Maybe you weren't there. We watched it.
Oh yeah, that was one of the years. Oh yeah. I think I was there for that one. Okay. I'd seen it before as well, but yeah. Someone did a full-length video theory stating that Snowpiercer is a secret sequel to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And it honestly kind of makes sense. I will see if I can't find it and send it to you because it's obviously not true. They did not intend that, but the fact that they can find so many connections between them, it's the best thing in the world.
Well, it's interesting. I'll have to give that a read.
That is the only film theory, batshit theory, I will ever respect. Because it is just so bonkers. And, the fact that someone had to think long and hard enough to figure this out, I just have nothing but respect for them.
But that means you don't like the comic strip of Calvin and Hobbes, where Calvin is in a loony bin, wrapped up in a straitjacket because he's seeing things.
I mean, I figured that was... I didn't even think that was a theory. I thought, they had confirmed that one.
No.
Oh, well. What do I know?
That was not an official Bill Watterson comic.
Oh.
I'm going to be completely honest with you. I forgot where we were.
Oh, yeah, we're done.
Where are we?
we're done. I think it's social time.
Oh, is that it? Okay.
Yeah. Don't worry.
Going to socials. Go ahead and follow us on any of your podcasting platforms. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Podbay, Podomatic, Stitcher, YouTube. we have a channel. We're on all of those. Go ahead and watch us there. Like the videos. Leave feedback and comments if you want. Or just rate. Those always help. Feel free to send an email, theyremadeit@gmail.com, with possible suggestions for future episodes, just ideas you have, thoughts, comments, anything.
Pester us, we love it.
Yes, bother us to no end. You can also bother us on They Remade It at Instagram and at It Remade on Twitter, where we post updates about new and upcoming episodes, possible future episodes, full circle diagrams that I put together, and posters for movies that we've recently covered or suggested in the episodes. And that's about it, I think.
Yeah. Covered a nice, spectrum of the biblical to non-biblical situations. And if you're watching at home, let us know how many times we said the word biblical throughout this episode.
Yes, I hope you had a counter and you had your bingo chart and marked it off right next to talking about the weather and tangent, 10-minute tangent, things like that. So,
if you get it right, you win a shiny quarter. You must find it yourself, but you still win it.
I left it somewhere outside of your upscale apartment.
Yes, and if you don't have an upscale apartment, you will soon.
That's the real gift.
What am I, a fortune teller now? What the fuck's going on?
Your lucky numbers are 13, 1, 27, 52, and 6.
And J.
And the letter J.
I have no idea what I'm on about.
The number I was thinking of was the letter J.
That's how all psychics sound to me. How did I even get here? We were talking about hell.
Yeah. Well, there was a psychic in the first movie.
Oh, shit. There was.
Palm Red, yeah.
Full circle. I guess.
Oh, I love it.
Well, I think my mind's pretty mushed enough. I think that about wraps it.
My mind has been warped. But yes, I agree.
Well, then, I suppose, as always, I am your overtly biblical referencing metaphor, Stuart.
Oh, and dream on. I'm Jacob.
Yeah, he. This has all been his ladder.
Yeah, this is my dream. Macaulay Culkin's outside.
He's pestering me. He won't leave me alone. He keeps telling me, "Come home, Dad. Let's go to heaven." I'm like, I don't know you. Also, you're like 40 now.
Yeah, that's just actually him.
It's just actual Macaulay Culkin outside your window. Oh, boy. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Dream on. God, no.